Execution by shooting has been used for centuries, but during the Second World War, one particular method became infamous: the neck shot, or Genickschuss. This form of killing was practiced across Nazi-occupied Europe, in the Soviet Union, and by other armies as well. Unlike the organised firing squad, which involved several soldiers firing at the chest of a condemned prisoner, the neck shot was intimate, brutal, and often carried out on a mass scale. A neck shooting execution involved placing the muzzle of a pistol or rifle directly against the back or side of the prisoner's head or neck, and then pulling the trigger. The bullet would typically enter at the base of the skull or upper spine, shattering the brain or spinal cord and killing the victim instantly, or nearly so. This method was not designed for spectacle, unlike the traditional firing squad. Instead, it was practical, quick, and silent enough for repeated use. It was most often used for political executions, mass killings, and the extermination of civilians. No regime used this method more widely than the Third Reich. From the invasion of Poland in 1939 to the final months of the Second World War, the neck shot became a standard execution technique for the SS and police. The Einsatzgruppen, mobile killing squads, were notorious for using the neck shot. These units followed the German army into Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union, tasked with eliminating Jews, Roma, communists, and other groups. Victims were rounded up, forced to kneel at the edge of mass graves, and executed one by one with a bullet to the back of the neck. Eyewitnesses described how officers would place the barrel of a pistol, often a Luger or Volta, directly against the victim's skin before then firing. The close-range shot reduced noise compared to volleys of rifle fire, conserved ammunition, and ensured that each prisoner was dead before the next one was brought forward. In Germany itself, prisoners condemned by the Nazis, resistance fighters, captured spies, or political dissidents were often executed by a single neck shot. The Gestapo, the secret police, carried out countless shootings in prison yards or in underground cells. At places like Pariak prison in Warsaw or Mauthausen concentration camp, victims were taken aside, told they were being photographed or moved, and they were then shot from behind at close range. The bullet would enter the brainstem or the upper spine, designed to cause instant collapse. The Soviet Union also made heavy use of neck shooting during the war. The NKVD, Stalin's secret police, had been practicing this technique even before the conflict began. Perhaps the most infamous example was the Katyn massacre of 1940. Over 20,000 Polish officers, intellectuals and leaders were executed by NKVD agents with a single pistol shot to the back of the head or neck. Victims were brought into small execution chambers, hands bound, and they were forced to kneel. An executioner then placed the barrel of a pistol, often a German-made Volta, ironically purchased by the Soviets, against the base of the skull, and they then fired. Bodies were dumped in mass graves in forests like Katyn, Kharkiv, and Mednoy. The method was chosen as it was efficient, used minimal ammunition, and, in some senses, prevented chaos. Throughout the war, Soviet authorities also used neck shooting to eliminate suspected collaborators, deserters, or captured enemy spies. It was the NKVD's standard technique for executions. Neck shooting was not just about efficiency, it also served as a tool of terror. It was controlling. It forced the victims to kneel, hearing the shot before them, and they felt the gun pressed against their neck, and it stripped them of all dignity. It was also quick. Large groups could be killed in relatively short time. A single executioner could kill hundreds in one day. But it was also intimate. Unlike firing squads, the neck shot required direct, personal contact between executioner and victim. For the Nazis and Soviets, this was a way of dehumanising victims while keeping the killing machine efficient. From survivor accounts, captured documents, and later war crimes trials, historians have reconstructed the process of a typical neck shooting execution. Firstly, there was the selection of the victim. Prisoners or civilians were chosen, often after interrogation or roundup operations. Secondly, there's transport. Victims were brought to an isolated spot, such as a prison cellar, forest or field. Things would then be prepared. Prisoners were usually bound, stripped of valuables, and sometimes forced to kneel. Then came the execution. The executioner stood behind, pressed a pistol to the base of the skull or the side of the neck, and fired a single round. Then the body would be disposed. The body collapsed forward or sideways and was then dragged away. In mass killings, bodies were thrown into prepared graves or pits. Because neck shooting was used in large-scale massacres, it is often associated with mass graves. In places like Babi Yar near Kiev, tens of thousands of Jews were shot in this manner over a few days in September 1941. Victims were forced to lie down on top of those already killed, then executed with a single shot to the neck before the next group was brought in. The method allowed the killers to maximise speed while minimising the chance of survivors. But sometimes people lived through these shootings. They were buried alive under the corpses though, and some who survived later told their stories. Different weapons were used depending on who carried out the execution. Nazis often used 9mm pistols, such as a Luger P08 or Volta P38. Soviets favoured the Nagant M1895 revolver, or they used German pistols like the Volta PP, which they purchased before the war. In some massacres, rifles or machine guns were also used, pressed against the neck for a point-blank kill. After the war, both the Nuremberg trials and later investigations uncovered the scale of neck-shooting executions. German SS officers were prosecuted for mass killings across Eastern Europe. Soviet crimes such as the Katyn massacre were denied by Moscow until the late 20th century, but the method was eventually confirmed by forensic evidence. Mass graves, schools with single bullet holes at the base, and testimonies of survivors all revealed how widespread the neck shot was. Neck shooting remains one of the most chilling symbols of wartime atrocities. It was not just execution, it was industrial killing, reduced to a mechanised process. For the Nazis, it was part of the Holocaust. For the Soviets, it was political repression. For the victims, it was terror in its most intimate form. The efficiency of the method, cheap, quick and reliable, meant it was used on an unimaginable scale. Hundreds of thousands of people, perhaps millions, were killed this way during the war. Execution by neck shooting was a brutal, systematic method of killing during World War II. It was used by both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union in prisons, forests, camps and occupied towns. Victims faced the terrifying intimacy of a pistol pressed to their neck, knowing that death was just a trigger pull away. Unlike the distant horror of bombing raids or tank battles, neck shooting represents the cold, direct violence of the war, the face-to-face murder of individuals on a massive scale. Remembering how it worked is essential to understanding the darkest side of human history during World War II. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.